Here we're going to talk about paralegals and interviewing. One of the main ways in which paralegals can assist attorneys is by interviewing people. In a busy law office, the attorneys rarely have time to interview everyone who may be able to provide useful information about an event or a transaction. Therefore, paralegals are often asked to locate individuals who may have useful information and to determine what information they actually have. If the information appears to be valuable, a paralegal may be directed to obtain that information through a thorough and systematic interview, and then later asked to record and organize that information for the law firm's use or for their attorney's use. So here we're going to learn about conducting interviews and look at an anatomy or structure that may be utilized. It's important, though, to remember that each individual office might have a particular structure or system that they have in place. So what you'll do is take these particular skills and transfer them into your place of employment. So clients are the people who will be most frequently interviewed by paralegals. And the goal of the interview is going to be to obtain as much information as possible, gather documents, make an assessment about the credibility of the person you're speaking with, so that you'll later be able to share all that information with your supervisor. In addition to clients, paralegals also will interview individuals who are not clients. An example would be a witness. As paralegals work in conducting interviews, it's always important to note that they are acting under supervision. So you will learn which interviews should be conducted by starting with the direction given to you by your supervising attorney. In the course of those interviews, you may gather leads that will raise additional people to be interviewed, and you would always check in with the supervising attorney and get instruction to go ahead and move forward with those interviews. So all through the process, not only are you being supervised, but you should seek supervision if you have any questions. Having a plan is pertinent. So if there, again, isn't one that is provided for you, you devise a plan utilizing the skills you're learning in this program. The interview plan will allow you to maximize the amount of information you're able to obtain. So you want to gather all information that you have. If there are any documents, review them in the client's file, become familiar with what information you have at hand, and then you want to conduct your interview using a structure. In part, you're going to need to formalize questions if there aren't any already available to you. We're going to talk about questioning when we look at the structure of an interview, but it's efficient to ask if there is a standard form. Does your office, for example, handle a certain type of cases routinely? And if so, do they use a questionnaire? For example, you might see this in an estates and probate office where they do will preparation. They might have a list of questions and information that they want the paralegal to gather. So you want to do your work in that regard, and then follow a structured format as you perform the interview. And we'll, again, get into that here shortly. It's also important to make sure that the environment is set up to result in an effective interview. So in light of that, some matters to consider are, selecting a convenient and comfortable location. Where is the interview being conducted? Often this is in a conference room in a law office. You want to maximize privacy. that is particularly important if you're doing virtual interviews. In our instance, in light of the pandemic, much work is being done virtually at home. So you want to ensure that the space around you is void of other people, that the person you're interviewing, especially if it's a client, has assurance that their confidences are being maintained. You want to eliminate distractions and allocate sufficient time for the interview to be conducted. So again, make sure you're putting effort into the environment. And this is also if they're in person in a law office. You want to, get your clients to a quiet place. You don't want, especially if there's a lot of energy around your office, make sure that they are not exposed to that. So let's go ahead and take a look at perhaps the most important concept is that if you are working with clients or otherwise, you are not an attorney. You need to avoid the unauthorized practice of law. So avoid UPL. You'll learn more and more as you go through the program, but for now, think. You want to get information, not give information. And if you have any questions or questions are posed to you, just defer to the attorney. And it is likely that a client will ask you for legal advice. And it could be as simple as, do you think I have a case? Well, what does the law say in this? Is the law on my side? Do you think I should move forward? Are some examples. And you need to have a go-to statement where you assure the client that you're going to help them gain information, but you let them know, I am not an attorney, but I can get that information by sharing it with our attorney, and we'll get back with you. So let's go ahead and look at the anatomy of the client interview. To begin, you want to make sure you deal with preparation. Again, we said you need to look at your case file, any documents, become familiar. You want to do this in an efficient way, so you're not going to spend too much time. You want to become familiar. You're not going to do research, but if it's a particular area of law, you want to think about the elements of that law and what factual information you will need to pull from the client, gather from the client so that you can determine whether those elements are satisfied or what type of research needs to be done. So to make connections, think about when we IRAC'd, you start with a set of facts. You need to get those set of facts. For those of you that are in research, think about your descriptive word approach. You all had a unit on research. Think about descriptive word approaches. You need the facts in order to generate the list of words to conduct the research. So that's what you're going to be doing here. And lastly, in terms of preparation, I like to tell students to be open to the information that they are about to receive. Don't go into an interview with a preconceived notion of what the outcome will be. Be open to receive information and let the interview go where it does. It's important for you to establish a rapport with the client. So there is an ice-breaking phase in the structure of the interview. In doing that, you want to think of unchallenging remarks you can make. So you could ask the client, how are you? If they're coming to your office, did you have any trouble finding our location? You could reference the weather, and that can be done virtually or not. It's a nice day today. You want to stay away from politics, religion, for example. In the ice-breaking phase, you need to determine, or you could even ask the client if you're in person, if they'd like a beverage. But in the ice-breaking phase, it's important for you to pay attention to the verbal and nonverbal communication that your client gives you. If the client is nervous, fidgety, appears uncomfortable, then you'll spend a little more time establishing the rapport and let them settle into the space before you actually start the interview. If you have a client that's all about business, they come, they have their paper, pencil, they're ready to take notes, bring out their documents. You don't want to spend a lot of time, talking about the weather or parking, for example, and you want to jump right into the interview. So the next phase would be in this ice breaking is to go ahead and introduce yourself and establish your role as a paralegal. And this will actually be effective should the unauthorized practice of law present itself. So you want to state your name. I'm Tracy Parker. I'm the paralegal working on your case. Attorney Willis has asked me to conduct your interview. Everything you say to me will be maintained in confidence. Have your spiel ready to go. And you will also outline what is going to occur in your meeting. Today, I'm going to conduct an interview where I'll gather information about your case. Once you've established what is to happen, then you can move on to the questioning. And it's important, I will add, you could reiterate there that you're not an attorney and therefore you cannot give legal advice. But any questions they have, you are glad to take back to the attorney. So again, you can establish that you're a paralegal, not an attorney. When you get to the questioning, a chronological approach is useful. And you want to ask open-ended questions. So an effective interview is really going to result in you doing more listening than speaking. You'll need to take notes. If you're recording, you want to ask for permission to record. So to get started with the interview, you want to pose a question such as, start at the beginning and tell me what happened. And that's an open-ended question. And you let the client speak. If you have a document that gives you the date of an incident, you can add to that and say, I noticed you were involved in an incident on October 2nd. You start at the beginning and tell me what happened. So you want to ask open-ended questions. If the client stops talking, you can actually just pick up and say, and what happened next? If you need clarity on a particular point, that's when you ask the closed-end question. So let's say they say, I've been in a car accident, and the client mentions that the road was slippery and they couldn't gain control of the car. But they haven't mentioned anything about the weather. Go ahead and say, can you tell me what the weather was like that day? The client might respond, it was raining hard. And then you can follow back up with an open-ended question. Okay, you said the road was slippery and it was raining hard. When your car started to slide, can you tell me what happened next? And that opens it back up. Again, you do not want to get into the position where you're asking question after question after question, unless that's the format that you've been provided by the office and they have a questionnaire in place. At the end of the interview, you want to do a recap. So confirm information, ask, is there anything additional you would like to share? Ask if there are any documents. And then go ahead and share the next steps. So you establish the follow-up based on the instructions you've been given by your supervising attorney, and let the client know that they are welcome to contact you should they think of anything additional or have any questions.